She won most talkative in high school, and she has been running her mouth ever since. Welcome to the Lisa Fisher Said podcast with your host, Lisa Fisher.
Okay, I love it when I have a guest on who's pro-beef or I guess, ruminant animal. And Devan, that's what you are, because I'm thinking about the steak I'm going to have at lunch today. And I even might have pimento cheese with fried pork rinds. Like, that's how serious I am. This is the one thing I've missed as a meat-based eater is the crunch. And you can buy pork rinds from a restaurant supply company. They're this big. And those of you that are watching on YouTube, they're the size of a Cinnamon Toast Crunch. And then they blow up like this. Mm-hmm. And they are delicious. That may be a Southern thing. Have you had a fried pork rind before from a restaurant?
No, and I have to say pork rinds aren't my favorite either, but I'll try it once. I'll try anything once. So
you haven't had it at a restaurant. I did not like them until I went to a restaurant. They fried them, they brought them out, and they had like a dipping sauce. You don't even need it. But the stuff you buy in a package, no bueno.
No, it's not. It doesn't sound the same. It's like pork belly. I like pork belly when it comes from a restaurant better.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about how did you get into the carnivore lifestyle? You look like a slim girl of perfect health, but I bet it wasn't always that way with your health.
No. So do you want me to start from the very beginning?
I love a good story. I have nothing but time.
Okay. So I had my first son. I'm 30 years old. I had my first son 6 years ago. And at that point when I had him, I had gained a significant amount of weight.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Welcome to pregnancy, right?
Right, right.
And so I had gained a lot of weight. And when I was 14 years old, I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's. So I had
that's
had
young.
Very young.
Wait. Let's stop just a moment. My girls both got diagnosed at 12 and 13 because I'm a bulldog mother who had Hashimoto's. Mm-hmm. Was your mother looking out for you, wondering why you were cold and you didn't have a period and your hair fell out?
It was the hair, and it was, I did have a period. My mom had thyroid disorder too. So she knew the signs. But really what encouraged her to keep pushing was I was chronically fatigued. Like I would come home from school and sleep.
Yes.
And I was never hungry, and I was chronically sick. I had strep throat chronically for about 6 months. So
I get it.
Yeah, it's all symptoms, and those are very, very common. The fatigue, the no appetite, and the hair loss, like just coming out in chunks. So my mom kind of knew something was going on, and she would not take no for an answer. So they finally figured that out. 14 years old, I was a freshman in high school, and I think it's important. I was a healthy kid. I was an athlete my entire childhood. I played sports, very active. We ate a healthy diet. And so I still had Hashis. And then, fast forward, I had my baby. I gained a lot of weight. I was maxed out on my thyroid medicine. And I was greatly unhappy with my health. I was chronically sick again. I was getting strep throat. All the things. And this is 12 years after being diagnosed with Hashimoto's. So my best friend is a doctor. And I was talking to him. I said, I really need to lose weight. And he had said, well, I'm doing a rotation with a physician right now who recommends the ketogenic diet. And
awesome.
And so I said, oh, okay, that's really interesting. Let me look into it. He's like, just try it for 30 days. So I said, I'll try it for 30 days. I did it for 2 weeks, hated it. I said, I'm going to stick it out. And after 30 days, I had already noticed a huge improvement in the way I felt. I lost probably 14 pounds in that period. A lot of it probably just from inflammation.
That's a lot of weight. That's a lot of weight. Yeah.
So at that point, at my heaviest, I was 220 pounds. I am a short person. I am not even 5'4". I'm just a little under 5'4". So 220 pounds is a significant amount of weight for someone of my stature.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to keep doing keto. I'm feeling good. I'm seeing results. And so I started to just get a little bit more serious about my health. And in this time period too, I had a little bit of a breast cancer scare. And for a 26-year-old, that's pretty scary.
Significant.
I had a swollen lymph node, but it was still scary, so I thought, wow, like I have a baby now. It's not just about me anymore.
Yeah.
So I continued with keto. Then I started getting into fitness. And in that time period of me starting keto, in about 9 months, I was able to decrease my levels of levothyroxine. And then after 12 months, I was off of levothyroxine completely. And I had lost probably about 50 to 60 pounds in that period.
Wait, whoa. We need to stop on a couple things. Number one, levothyroxine, my listeners know, I say it's like taking a Tic Tac because it made me take naps and gain weight, which I could do for free. So did it even give you relief at some time?
You know what? I have to say, I never remember taking my medication on like with thyroids, because there were times where I would run out of medication. They're like, oh, well, we need to get you into the endocrinologist to be tested to see what your levels need to be again. I never once took levothyroxine after not taking it for a period of time and thought, wow, I feel a lot better. I never did.
I want people to hear that. And I'm not, I mean, every body is different. So your physiology is different from mine. My daughters take different dosages and different brand names than I do. So we're all different. But the shortcoming of levothyroxine is it's just T4. Mm-hmm. You hope it converts to T3 because that's what you use on a cellular level.
Right.
But then nature, the way God made us, there's T2, T1, T0, and calcitonin. And that's what Armour thyroid or the complete thyroid, I don't know if they're bioidentical, but they're the natural preparation. Mine's from a pig. And it gave me my life back. But levothyroxine on its own didn't. What was your highest dose on that?
125 milligrams.
That's really not that high because it typically is titrated based on weight. Mm-hmm. So if you weighed 125, you would take 125 micrograms. I'm surprised because of your weight, they didn't bump you up to because it's
makes
in
me
like.
Wonder if I'm wrong about that because it's been so long, and I thought it was 125. What was it? Micrograms, actually, not milligrams.
It's micrograms. It's dosed very, 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 very small.
Yeah, and so it makes me wonder. But again, I wasn't really paying attention because
you didn't feel better, so it wasn't a perfect fit for you.
It was just I had been on the medication for so long that it was like, oh, I have to take this. Like it didn't matter to me.
Right.
Except for once I started losing weight and I got my thyroid tested and he's like, you can lower your medication. Like we can lower it. And I finally was like, well, do I need it? And he goes, well, come back in 6 months and you might not need to if you keep losing weight. And that kind of became the goal. Well, if I don't want to have to go, if I don't need to take medication, I would prefer not to. If there's a natural solution, I'm losing weight anyway. So then that kind of quickly became my goal is to why be on something if I don't have to?
For sure. Yeah, for sure. So, okay. And then the other question before you continue is another risk of having low thyroid during reproductive years is miscarriage. Mm-hmm. Did you miscarry at all during that time?
No, I have to say I'm super thankful. I'm very blessed. I have been having no issues with conceiving either of my children very intentionally. And I have always had easy, breezy menstruation too.
Really?
So, yes. And I know that a lot of, of course I've had some cramping, but I have never been one of those people that's debilitated by my period.
And some people, I don't know if it's an autoimmune connection. A lot of us think it's a gut-brain connection, but a lot of women, young women, so I'm telling anyone listening, who have really difficult menstrual cycles, sometimes there's a connection. I think it's pituitary, adrenal, thyroid axis. I mean, I don't know because I think I'm a doctor, but I know I'm not. So I'm just saying pursue it. But that's really good news, Devan, to hear that you kind of breeze through that. And kind of after you have a baby, your periods some people say their periods get a little easier. Right. So it might even be better for you.
Right. Yeah. And so I'm very lucky. But yeah, that's kind of how I got it started in the keto space. I lost all that weight. I was able to get off of the medications. Then fast forward 4 years, I maintained a keto lifestyle pretty much for 4 years. I got pregnant again with my second son, no problems. It was a wonderful pregnancy.
And what was your weight at this time? What was
when
what were
I
you
got
looking
pregnant
at?
with my second son? I want to say I was about 158, 159-ish. So that he's almost 3. So this is about 4 years ago.
Yeah, that's 60 pounds down from your highest weight. That's significant.
And I had maintained that for over a year, and a half-ish. So, I got pregnant really easily. I had a great pregnancy. The only thing during my pregnancy that I noticed was, number one, my thyroid didn't do as well. So I had to go back on a minimal dose of levothyroxine, which is very typical. With those who have a history of thyroid disease. And then I did start getting migraines to the point of being hospitalized for them. And I had never, ever, ever had a migraine in my entire life, to the point where they thought I was having an aneurysm, because it was I had never had it. I had never experienced it. And they said, let's go to the dentist and make sure you don't have like an abscessed tooth or anything like that, and just check all the boxes. And I did have to get a brain scan because they were a little concerned. It was just migraines.
So were those estrogen related or hormone related?
I have no clue. There was never any there was no resolution with that. It was something that I did have to deal with throughout the pregnancy. I will say I did not drink coffee during my pregnancy, but I did drink tea because the caffeine seemed to help alleviate.
It does help. Yeah, it does help alleviate the pain.
But I had a wonderful pregnancy. I gained 30 pounds of the typical weight, unlike my first one. But when I had my son, I continued to have the migraines, and I was still on levo. I still needed a little bit of the levothyroxine. After I had my second son, I had started having a lot of urinary tract infections.
Oh, shoot.
So about 10 in a 12-month period.
Oh my gosh!
These were diagnosed as UTIs. And so finally, after a year of dealing this, I was like, I got to go see a specialist. Like, this is not, I'm on antibiotics all the time. And, I'm doing a ketogenic diet at this time too, thinking I'm being healthy. I'm doing the healthiest thing. I lost and had so much success before. And so I saw a specialist, and I was diagnosed with mild kidney stones, very mild kidney stones, an enlarged kidney, and something called interstitial cystitis.
Yeah.
And I have actually had a history of UTIs pretty much all through high school in my adult life. Sometimes they're very mild, but I would still get an antibiotic because white blood cells showed up in the strip when they do the urinalysis. And so I finally was like, I cannot take this pain anymore. This is crazy. It hurts. And, I went to the urologist, and he said, well, you don't have UTIs. You have something called interstitial cystitis. And basically it's the inflammation of the lining of your bladder based on something you're usually consuming in the diet.
So it is triggered by food.
Yeah. So I wasn't having, I often wonder how many UTIs I actually had versus a misdiagnosis. Because
did you need the antibiotics though with the interstitial?
There is nothing there is nothing that can actively help minus pain medication. There's nothing that can actively help.
I hate that you were on the antibiotics all the time.
I know. So my urologist was wonderful. He was really, really, really awesome, because I am so uncomfortable. It hurts. It feels like a UTI. I don't have a UTI. I'm drinking water. I'm doing all the right things. And he gave me a list of 10 foods, 10 things, not just specifically foods, beverages as well, and said, you need to cut out every single one of these to see what is triggering you. And I mean, this is from coffee to wine to spicy foods to processed meats, to acidic vegetables to fruits that have seeds in them. Everything was things that we're consuming. Artificial sweeteners were a no-go. And so I cut all of them out. And still something was triggering me.
Oh, wow.
And finally, I was like, I'm basically only eating meat with a certain little tiny amount of vegetables. Like, why don't I just eat meat and see what happens? I had known about carnivore. I, had listened to Michaela Peterson. I had listened to Paul Saladino, all the big ones, Dr. Ken Berry. And so I did. And I have had an extreme amount of success on a carnivore diet, an extreme amount of success. So
isn't that incredible? So Dr. Saladino says, and Anthony Chafee, they both like to say, and it sounds crazy that plants don't want to be eaten.
They don't.
And when you say that in this climate, the political climate that's pushing vegetarian and veganism, they think we're nuts.
Right, right.
When they go back, Dr. Chafee, I just interviewed him on my podcast and I saw him talking about it on another one this week. He talks about his botany professor in medical school who even explained a botanist knows about things that grow from the ground. Mm-hmm. And he said, let me tell you all the anti-nutrients that are in these things that grow from the ground.
Yeah.
And the things that can bother you. So when we say that, it's not because I'm trying to push a political agenda of eat more meat. I don't care if you do or not. I just know it can help you feel better. Mm-hmm. And Michaela Peterson is somebody you need to look up. And I'll put that in the show notes, some resources, because somebody may be listening to me for the very first time and not know of my love for these things. But didn't you think at first that you were crazy, that God made tomatoes and you should be eating tomatoes, which tomatoes are very inflammatory for a lot of people. Nightshade vegetables are. So was tomatoes one of them?
Tomatoes, peppers, onions, basically every nightshade, anything in the nightshade, especially, for people who suffer from thyroid disorders, you shouldn't be consuming nightshades anyway.
I hate hearing that. Yeah.
And I had kind of gotten to a space where I knew that not every food was good for us. I grew up in a family that had severe celiac disease. So of course it was natural for me to know that not all food is great for us. Yeah. And then, once I started doing a ketogenic diet and I realized, okay, these things aren't great for us either. And, the elimination diet. So once I got to carnivore, my mind was really open to understanding that most things are not great for us. I had already, known that nightshades weren't good for thyroid disease because of my family, and, gluten can be really inflammatory to everything pretty much.
Was gluten completely eliminated from your diet years ago? Or did you dabble with it?
So first of all, I should very much clarify that during my time as a keto person, and even up to now, I am not someone who will never, I will eat gluten occasionally on a special occasion. I am not, I want to say, what is the, I like to experience things occasionally.
Good. I agree.
Right? And so gluten was a no-go in my family's household, but gluten-free things were okay. And sometimes
we now know there's a bunch of crap in the gluten-free thing. So you have to, in fact, there are more seed oil sometimes than that. I'd rather eat the gluten by that point, but you have to decide which of the two evils you want. So.
But when I was on a ketogenic, gluten wasn't, I didn't do any gluten. I didn't do any breads. And especially, I started keto 5 years ago. This was before keto was super, super, super mainstream. Yeah. So there weren't a lot of keto treats on the market. And so the temptation wasn't there. And I think that's why I had so much success in the beginning, because it was whole foods. It was meat, vegetables, and dairy. And that was it. So I don't love gluten right now, but I will occasionally do it for a special occasion.
Well, those of us who are graduates of the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, New York, where I have my health coaching certification, we're taught, love the foods that love you back. And gluten doesn't love me back. Corn doesn't love me back. So if I have a corn chip or if I have a piece of bread, I have to pay the consequences, but I'm a grown-ass woman, as we say. Mm-hmm. And so as a grown-ass woman, I make my decision, but that's what I'm saying. So I think if people employ that mantra into what they put on their fork, they'll feel better. So I feel my best, except for that little bit on Saturday. Sometimes we have a treat day. We don't call it cheat day, but where I might have a dessert or I might have something and it might have gluten in it. And then I'm miserable. The first 30 minutes after it, I say every time to my husband,
I'm
I'm
never
never
doing
doing
this
this
again.
Yes, I sound like really that alcoholic when the bar opens. I'm like, just one more drink, just one more piece, because it does. Once you eliminate offensive foods and you then dip your toe in, for me, then you really know what you're doing is right. But at first, Devan, when you started, you probably thought, I'm insane. You know, I surely I'll be able to eat these things.
When I started keto, I thought, well, I'm just going to do it temporarily. I'm just going to do it to lose a bunch of weight, and then I'm going to not do it anymore. And I don't know when that mind shift happened. I want to say that shift in my brain happened when I started working out, and one of my instructors was a really fit, just looked like the model of health. And she's like, oh yeah, I've been doing ketogenic diet for probably 6 years. And I think that was kind of the shift where I was like, wow, like this is someone that I admire, that I listen to, that I'd like to look like one day. And that's what you want. You know, that's who you want to learn from. And that's who you want to take advice from, is the people that you want to be like. And I think that's when my shift happened with keto. And with carnivore, honestly, I just was like, I'm going to do carnivore until I'm not in pain anymore. Cause I was in a significant amount of pain with my interstitial cystitis. I was in a lot of pain, and I thought, I just don't want to be in pain. And then once I stopped being in pain, and then I also started experiencing the weight loss and how good I felt. Mm-hmm. And then I started thinking like, oh, maybe there's more to this. Maybe there's like a lot more to this. And that's when I got on social media, and my husband was like, you should be documenting this. Like, you should start social media. So I do think that with carnivore, especially, I was like, oh, I'm just going to do, a couple months to get off my medication, see if it helps with the interstitial cystitis. I don't want to be in pain anymore. And then once I realized how good I felt, I don't really want to stop this,
Well, let's define keto, and then let's define carnivore. So give me a keto definition.
So for me, keto is meat and veggies.
And dairy.
And dairy, yes. Meat and veggies and dairy. I did fall a little victim to some of the keto treats towards the end of my ketogenic diet because they were available. Yeah. But in the beginning, it was very much meat, veggies, and cheese, mostly cheese, because there's a lot of cheese, dairy keto products that were out there. But even now, when I think of a ketogenic diet, and I might tell someone to do a ketogenic diet, I am not talking about doing the keto breads. I don't believe in that stuff. Right. So I've had family members that I'm like, oh, just go try keto, do keto. Mm-hmm. Well, what do I eat? Mm-hmm. Meat, veggies, and cheese, So that's what's keto to me. And to carnivore, I define it as a all meat diet. I am also a 99.9% dairy-free carnivore too.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask you. Dairy bothers a lot of Hashimoto's patients and thyroid patients. Do dairy or eggs bother you?
So I don't see an issue with eggs, but I also don't love eggs. So I'm not consuming them regularly as much as I am trying to consume more of them. I'm doing that intentionally. Dairy, actually, I cut dairy out a couple months ago because I noticed that I started getting cystic acne, and I've never had acne a day in my life. Ever. I've never had acne. I never had acne as a teenager. And then I did start getting acne when I did keto the first time around, but I never put 2 and 2 together. And then once I really eliminated all those toxins through the veggies and, all the keto things that I was eating, and I just started eating meat, eggs, and dairy, I started noticing my acne getting more severe. I thought, oh, this is really strange. I've never been someone who suffers from acne. So I cut dairy out in November. And then I reintroduced it, started getting acne again, and then I cut it out. So I don't do cheese. I do some organic half and half in my coffee in the mornings, and that's pretty much the extent. But I've done the A1 dairy as well. That makes me feel better, but we live in a really small town now, and it's really hard to find. So whenever I do find it, I buy them in bulk. But I don't do cheese. I noticed cheese, even when I introduced it back in and did not see acne right away, I just felt bloated. And so I thought, I don't really love cheese anyway.
It inflames you.
It
really just inflames you.
It really does.
What about the raw dairy? Have you tried that? Raw milk and raw cheese?
No, I haven't. And honestly, I think it's just because I don't even care to go on that journey.
Okay. Yeah. There you go. What about your kids? Because, our kids sometimes, they do, they're related to us in our DNA. So do you notice any dairy sensitivities with your kids and gluten?
So my first son did not eat gluten or respond well to dairy until he was almost 3 years old. We were a gluten-free household, and he could not do any, and you know what, to this day, he still doesn't, because he just never did. He was not a kid who could drink cow's milk. We did almond milk with him because I didn't know any better and I thought it was healthy.
I just now seen the argument on almond milk. What is it that people are pushing back from?
Pushing it for or against it?
Pushing back against it. They're saying, those of you who are trying to be healthy, throw out the almond milk. We know the soy milk because the soy is poison. But what about almond milk?
So almond milk is really interesting. And I consumed a lot of almond milk and almond flour when I was keto. And what I didn't know is that almonds are very high in oxalates.
That's what it is.
Yeah, yes. Oxalates are not good for anyone who has kidney and bladder problems.
There you go.
The mild kidney stones that I showed traces of having were probably a result of over-consuming high oxalate foods. Other high oxalate foods are any nuts, any seeds, spinach, things like that.
Spinach is notorious. I know that.
Yeah.
Now, so spinach, they're the cruciferous vegetables that are really bad for Hashimoto's patients and thyroid patients because they'll present with a goiter, which is a swollen gland. So I'm wondering, are all cruciferous vegetables high in oxalates? So are Brussels sprouts high in oxalates?
They're not the highest, but what I was told is that I should never eat raw cruciferous vegetables.
Got it. Sure. Yeah. I can see that.
Yeah.
I can see that. But you would never eat spinach again. I would have to be starving on a deserted island. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And I won't even touch almond flour anymore, anything with just because I know that I have kidney problems, and so I know that the only high oxalate food I do consume is I do drink coffee still, but I have given that up. I've given that up for months and months and months and months.
So coffee's high in oxalates too.
Yes. And it's my weakness, and it's more of a, so we just moved from a big city, and my husband is a coffee drinker too. And one of our favorite things is going to local coffee shops and sitting together and drinking coffee. So for me, it was more of like a social thing. That's just something my husband and I really bond over. Yeah. And so I have cut it out. I did cut it out when my urologist told me, hey, like coffee's not great for bladder conditions. And I did for months and months and months. And then once I had been feeling really good, I wanted to see like, hey, can I enjoy a cup of coffee in the morning? And I did. And it's my last vice, I would say, that I'm still gripping onto. And I'm actually thinking of giving it up next month to just play around and see how I do with that.
Is it the caffeine you like? If he's not with you, or I'm not a coffee drinker, but I hear people say that they love the smell when it's in the coffee pot, and they love the tradition and what they do, the routine, and they love the slow sipping of it. Is it the whole feel?
I think it's very ritualistic for me. So I wake up really early in the morning. I try and wake up before my kids. That's when I do like my content, my editing, reading, things like that, and catch up on all the things that I want to do, because I am a stay-at-home mom of 2 kids. And I think the caffeine is a great bonus because I am a stay-at-home mom with a 2.5-year-old and a 6-year-old boy, and we homeschool our children.
Yeah.
So I do think there's the caffeinated, but there's also something so comforting to me about it. So it is a ritual. I'm very habitual in my actions too. I'm just very,
Yeah, I can see that.
But I do like to tell people it is something I gave up.
Are you going to do tea then? Will hot tea, green
no,
tea
I just wouldn't. I just wouldn't
Okay.
drink anything, to be honest. I just sparkling water probably.
Yeah. Wow. What's your alcohol intake?
So I drink occasionally. I do love alcohol, and in a not an alcoholic kind of way.
No. I'm not judgy. What kind though? So what does a carnivore, ketovore, or you're maybe more carnivore now? What does that person choose then for alcohol?
So I would either Trulies. I don't know if you've ever had the Trulies. Yeah. That's my go-to. Like if I were to sit and have a drink in my house, that's what it would be.
So it's really just kind of a souped up, sparkling water with flavor and like this much alcohol. And my fingers are hardly even apart.
Yeah, it's really more of like a sensation, drinking the water with but I do have to go into drinking alcohol knowing that there's very much potential that my cystitis is going to act up.
Really?
Because alcohol is a severe, if not the biggest trigger for my cystitis. So if I drink maybe once every 6 to 8 weeks now. Because it is an intentional action that I go into knowing that I may have a flare up if I do consume alcohol.
So the time that you had the year's worth just about of what you thought were UTIs or bladder infections, it was just probably the cumulative effect of Western living, of having a cocktail, of having spinach because people told us to eat it 90 times a day, of having almond flour because you thought that was healthier. You really kind of walked into it innocently and then it almost killed you.
Right. And it's one of those things that I think about quite often is how could I have avoided that year of like pain? Because it's chronic pain.
I'm sure.
Pain, just by taking out some of these vegetables and these like processed almond flours. And I was a big Diet Coke person when I was on keto because that's a keto safe food. It was my vice. And I think that was also a huge trigger because artificial sweeteners are just awful for cystitis as well in general.
Now, was that the urologist that gave you the list of the 10 things to remove?
Yes.
That urologist, that's pretty forward thinking because sometimes, not all doctors, but sometimes they want you just to take a pill. Mm-hmm. But he or she was saying, let's look at upstream, what's causing, if people would stop and think what's causing the inflammation and the irritation. And if you ask, you'll get an answer. Not all, I know that's not a blanket statement. Because your migraines, you probably still don't know what triggered that. I bet it was estrogen imbalance or something with pregnancy.
You want to know what? I think that it was the oxalate because oxalate intolerances can cause migraines. But I think
my gosh.
I think another part is I think that I was electrolyte deficient as well.
Oh. Wow.
I have not had a single migraine in the almost 12 months that I have been a carnivore.
Wow.
Yeah, I have not had a single migraine.
So what is it? You're having a lot of salt then with your meat.
I drink electrolytes daily because I'm an avid weightlifter. So I'm consuming electrolytes while I'm working out every single day. And I salt everything. And I think back to when I was on a ketogenic diet, I never salted my food. I've never been someone who salted my food. I just don't. I knew it was important when I went into carnivore because everyone was like, you have to make sure you're replenishing your electrolytes. So I'm going to take a wild guess that I was under consuming the proper ratios of electrolytes.
I believe it.
Because the ratios are important too.
Oh, I agree, but I don't know what they are. But I do
I don't
know there
either.
has to be a good balance. Okay, of potassium, sodium,
Mhm.
magnesium. Magnesium's magical,
Yeah,
and we're all deficient.
and the quality of the salt. So I use Redmond's real salt for
Sure,
everything. I think the
sure.
quality of salt really
Yeah,
matters as well,
I agree.
versus like a table salt. So when I was on a ketogenic diet, I probably was just using the standard salt that you get at the grocery store, which is not going to have that proper.
No, in fact, throw it out. It's
It's
processed and it's
garbage.
crap.
Yeah.
Yeah. Get the Himalayan or the Celtic
Mhm,
sea salt or
mhm.
the Redmond. Redmond sells them.
In
And
bulk.
again, this is for those watching visually. I can tell you huge bags. I have like the rock salt and I have the
Mhm.
fine salt and
Yeah.
I have all the things. And that is one of the best freedoms of knowing that we've been lied to, because in the last 10 years or 20 years they told us to cut out our fat, cut out our salt, and we're the fattest we've ever been and unhealthiest we've
Mhm.
ever been because we were cutting out the things that our bodies have to have.
Yeah, yeah, especially as women.
Yes, for
I
sure.
think the worst advice that you could ever give someone as far as nutrition is a low fat, low sodium diet. I think it's an absolute recipe for chronic illness and
It's
disease.
awful.
Yeah.
It's awful, and that only gets more imperative as you reach 40, because even, perimenopause starts maybe 7 years before the decline. So even in your mid 30s, Devin, it's important that women, you tell your peers to
Mhm.
increase their protein intake. And it's challenging. I mean, I try it every day. I tried to do the 1 gram per pound model, but I'm 5'8" and 150 pounds. I can't even get to 100 pounds because once I have the steak and the eggs, I'm full.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a
So
I'm a
what do you do then to supplement to get more in?
so I am a huge and this is actually I tell people that I feel so I've lost 37 pounds on carnivore in the past.
So what are you, about 120 now?
I'm 144.
What you went for? Okay,
Yeah.
I can't do math, but
No,
yeah.
it's okay.
Okay.
I started off at 181 in February of last year. So my 1 year carnivore anniversary is coming up and I'm 144 right now.
Awesome.
And so I've lost a significant amount of weight, but
Yeah.
I like to tell people now that I think my weight loss journey is coming to a conclusion because I'm feeling I'm maintaining very, very well. And I'm consistently maintaining my weight out in the 140s. So right now, I think my journey more is for aesthetics and my performance in the gym. I am a huge weightlifter. I lift 6 days a week because I love it.
Do you
And
really?
right
Oh man.
now, the aesthetic, I've lost all the weight that I wanted to lose, but now I want to look a certain way at the weight that I am. And so part of that was starting to work with a trainer, a professional, because I am not a professional. And a part of that, starting to work with someone is learning the amount of protein that you need to consume to build a significant amount of muscle. And so I thought that I was eating all these calories and all this protein because I'm so full all the time and I'm, so satiated. And then he had said, well, you kind of need to just start tracking to just kind of gauge where you're at. And I learned that I'm under consuming protein and I'm under consuming calories. And so for the past couple of months, my focus has been really getting my minimum intake of 130 grams of protein a day. I usually get to 150 or more.
You are my queen. I mean, what are you doing to do that?
So I eat a lot of ribeyes.
Yeah, I'm having one for lunch, but once you have that ribeye, then I don't know if I want a second one that day.
Yeah, I eat a lot of ribeyes and I eat a lot of ground beef. So I eat about 150. Most days I'm hitting between 150 to 170 grams of protein a day, which is a crazy amount of protein for a lady. My ratios for my caloric intake tend to be 60% fat to 40% protein ratio. So I'm going between 2 calorie intakes. I've been going between 1,700 and 2,100 calories a day. And I also like to preface this conversation with everyone's caloric intake is different based on their body, size, weight, and their activity level. I am very active and I'm very short. So I get a lot of people, well, I'm going to eat 1,700 calories. I'm like, if you're a whole foot taller than me, you should be eating way more.
Yeah.
And so my fat to protein ratio is usually 60 to 40. I think most women are under consuming protein severely, and it is incredibly, incredibly important to be eating protein. And so my minimum that I will allow myself to ever consume is 130 grams. And that is the standard that most professionals will tell you.
Are you doing any protein shakes
Yes.
or anything in a dish to supplement?
Yes. So not every day. I don't need to have one every day. Some days I am lower on protein. So I do drink one of the Equip. It is the Equip beef isolate protein. It is a complete protein. I just learned that. I did not think it was a complete protein. But it is a carnivore friendly. It comes from grass-fed, grass-finished cows.
It's a powder.
And it's a powder, and it's absolutely delicious. They have an unflavored version, and it is 30 grams of protein for every scoop. So
water, or
I just mix water and creatine in with it.
Really? And it tastes okay?
It's delicious. It gets really frothy and almost like foamy, like a milkshake.
Do you do a hand blender with that?
No, I do a real blender. Okay, you got it.
You do.
Yeah, I get it. I have a real blender because the better you blend it, the more airy and light it becomes, and it's delicious.
So I'm in intermittent faster, so we talk about opening our window and all that, closing our window. So within your eating time frame, I'm not saying, everyone stops eating at some time. So when you eat again, do you open your eating window with protein, or do you close it with protein?
I do it in the middle. So
you do it in the middle.
Yeah, my eating window is generally only 6 hours. I usually intermittent fast for about 18 hours a day.
You're in the intermittent fasting family then, for sure.
Yeah, and it's not intentional. It feels very natural to me. It's very, very natural to me. It just feels right, and it feels good. So I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I do have, some coffee. But I almost never eat breakfast just because I don't feel like I need to. And it's not I have a low appetite, because I definitely have an appetite. And then I will go do my workout. I get home around 12 o'clock usually, and I will eat my first meal. And then right after, or in between my first and second meal, that's when I would drink the protein shake.
Okay. So you have a meal, a protein shake, and then another meal.
Yes.
Do you do 2 ribeyes in a day?
I can.
You're a champ.
I can. I don't typically, just because the ribeyes are super expensive right now.
Hey, have you done the sirloin? Someone said to get the sirloin at Costco, and that it's kind of a poor man's ribeye.
Right. I love sirloin. I am not a steak snob. I will do a sirloin slathered in butter, just to make it that fatty, just fatty as well.
Do you do it on the grill or in a skillet?
I usually do it on the grill. I much prefer to eat steak off the grill. But if I have to, I will even air fry a steak if I don't have the means to do anything else. But no, I would love to be eating ribeyes twice a day, but usually I do like a ground beef. I almost 75% of my diet is beef. But I've been really into chicken wings right now. So usually lunch is chicken wings. And then for dinner, I'll have some sort of beef. It's usually a ribeye, a strip steak. Tonight we'll have some chuck in the crock pot that's been cooking for like 16 hours. So something really fatty and satiating at the end of the night is what I credit for not being hungry first thing in the morning.
Yeah. Oh, I agree with that. Now, some people stay away from birds, chicken, but some people trying to get their fat intake do dark meat and chicken. So they're doing, I guess, wings and drummies. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like do you think you're gravitating toward that because of taste and flavor, or is it higher in fat?
What I found with chicken wings, it's that chicken wings are almost perfectly with the 60-40 ratio of fat to protein. Oh. So it's super easy. But I think something important to talk about is there can be some palate fatigue. And I go through cycles of things that I want to eat. So I didn't eat chicken for probably 4 months, not a single bite of chicken, because I didn't want it. But now I think I ate so much beef that I'm kind of having some palate fatigue, and that crunch of the chicken wing. It sounded good. And we just moved to a new area where there is a Buffalo Wild Wings by us. We didn't have one at our old house, and they cook their wings in beef tallow. So it's like very safe.
They do?
Yes. No seed oils.
Then I'm so glad you told me that. I don't know of any restaurants, especially a franchise like that, that's good news.
Yeah. Yeah. It's wonderful to go there and know that there's not going to be any seed oils.
But what about, I've only been because I had a son, and when he was in high school made me go because I was like, ooh, and it's dirty and I felt messy and I didn't eat it. But wouldn't their sauces then have a seed oil in them?
Yeah. And so sometimes I do naked and I won't get any sauces. And sometimes I'm like, if I feel okay consuming that, I will get a sauce. Recently I went and I did get 30 wings and I did get sauce on them, but I just make that deliberate choice of like, okay, I know that this isn't the perfect food and I'm okay with that. I'm just going to really moderate how much I'm consuming.
Could you pick those up and take them home? Would they be
That's what I do.
home and you could? Okay.
Yeah. That's what I do. I usually order way more than I can eat. And then I'll eat them over the next couple of days, at home because it's just super easy for me and it's good. And I'm sure I'll get sick of them in the next couple of weeks because I've been eating them every day.
I think I was sick of chicken because of all those years that I ate it because it was low in fat and I pulled the skin off. So I have had an aversion, really. I haven't had any chicken in the 7 or 8 months I've been a carnivore, but I would do that because I had palate fatigue for sure. But the wings, so how would I cook my wings? I don't have an air fryer. But
if I got
your girl here can cook, I can cook.
Yeah, because I do buy my own wings occasionally, I would sprinkle some baking soda on them and then I would throw them in the oven and cook them usually for about 40 minutes, I think is what they say. And then you broil them to get them crunchy. I have if you need someone to tell you how to cook really good wings, my partner in crime is a chef. And so I can show you her page. And she, I think, just posted a video on how she gets her wings.
Okay, wait, what's her social media handle?
Her Courtney Luna. She is a retired yacht chef. And so her approach to carnivore is all about cooking. She's she's the go-to girl with the recipes. She's absolutely wonderful.
You know who else has good recipes? Laura Spath.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It looks like Laura's path. Like you think her Instagram handle is about her path, but her last name is Spath, I think.
Yeah.
Right. And her weight loss is unbelievable. I'll put that in the show notes too. But she's given me a lot of ideas. She does the bread cheese. Have you seen that?
I love it. That was the hardest thing for me to give up when I went to
that's right, because of your dairy. Oh my gosh. It's like people have said it's like almost Wisconsin curds kind of thing. So I'd never had it, but I had it yesterday and I had a can of tomatoes. I'm reintroducing tomatoes to see I've done because I've removed them 7 or 8 months ago. And I'm seeing how I do. And I made my own red sauce and girl, it was because there's an Italian flavored cheese. It is so good. I'm sorry. Rest in peace, cheese for you.
It's so on Christmas Day, I made my family a traditional, Christmas dinner and I made a ribeye and I said, the only thing I want is I'm going to have like a bread cheese. And that's the only time I've had bread cheese since going cheese free. Dairy free since the beginning of November. And that was my little treat. But I could definitely tell the difference. It was one of those really deliberate and intentional decisions to consume that just for the sake of it's really yummy and delicious and everyone else is eating the traditional food and I'm not. So
yeah, for the rest of you who aren't dairy or cheese sensitive, you have to ask them at Kroger. They have it in a special cheese section. Fresh Market has it. And then we even ran out here and I was about to slit a tire of somebody if she was buying my cheese. And then because I talk about it, a social media ad, an Instagram ad came up, Wisconsin bread cheese. And then I bought it like 12 of them. My
favorite brand is the Big Moo. You can
order the Big
bulk.
Moo. Yes.
It's absolutely delicious.
Yes. And I'm telling you, it doesn't, the people have asked me, what is the magic? It's not, it doesn't melt. So you cube it or put it in strips, but you fry it or you put it in a hot skillet with either butter or an iron skillet. We'll just do it. And it crisps it up on the edge, on the outside.
And you're right when you said that earlier, there is some elements missing in the carnivore diet that you do miss. And that crunch is one of them. I get it from the chicken wings because I get them extra crispy.
I'm going to start doing that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I always make sure if I go to Buffalo Wild Wings, I get extra crispy. And then when I reheat them, I put them back in the air fryer because it's that really crunchy sensation. But the bread cheese definitely did give that sensation to me too. Yeah. And I also think something else is if you're like it almost has that grilled cheese effect. It's like a very comforting food. And to me, some of the best comforting foods on Carnivore is like a bone broth, but then like a bread cheese because it's got that almost grilled cheese effect on the palate.
What are you doing? The other thing I'm missing, we had a few ice days here and, people are posting all the recipes. Well, I don't eat any of that anymore. All I have is bone broth and beef. But I saw somebody say she used her bone broth, either it was, you can use chicken or beef at that point, and she put her cooked ground beef in it. And I do it, of course, mixed with the organs. And that was her soup. And she said, I know it sounds boring, but it really is very satisfying. What do you do for soup now?
So I had started getting a little cold last week and I wanted soup. So I do beef bone broth in the pressure cooker with chuck or stew beef. The stew beef that I buy from Costco, and I cook it for an hour and put a ton of salt in it. And that's my soup.
So the beef is, by that point, it falls apart.
It's like, especially if you get like a chuck roast, the fat just melts in your mouth.
Yeah.
Very, very, very comforting.
I mean, how many people right now are offering podcasts where you have cooking lessons within the podcast?
Right.
I think it's brilliant,
soup.
Devan.
Healthy soup.
I think yes. And the chicken wings, I'm totally going to tackle.
That is me, isn't it?
And the extra crispy part, I have a convection oven. You can raise things on a convection oven so that it circulates, so I can still get the effect of an air fryer. My mouth's watering even talking about this. I thought I wanted the ribeye. Now I'm telling my husband I want to go out and get chicken wings. I mean, my goodness. And I never thought I would eat them. Let me think. So dessert, what do you do for dessert? Do you do any local fruits in season?
I am not an advocate for fruits on the carnivore diet. I'm happy to dive into my explanation behind that. Occasionally, I think during the summer, we got a fresh local watermelon and I had a little mini cup of that. Like I said, I am not perfect. I am someone who will go out, and if it's date night, I will have something sweet. But I also am not standing on a carnivore diet at that point, and that's occasionally. But in my everyday, day-to-day life, I don't do anything sweet minus the protein shakes that I do, like the protein shakes that does have some like flavoring to it. But that is just, and I never crave it. But I don't do any sweets anymore.
And go ahead and tell me your fruit explanation is, because Dr. Saladino, remember, waffled. He said no fruit, and then he's saying local fruits in season because he's in Costa Rica, where there's plentiful.
Right. Yeah, and so I also have a podcast with my friend Courtney, and we've talked to a lot of people like Dr. Chafee and all the big people. My issue with fruit on a high fat diet is that from an evolution standpoint, they did not coexist for most of the year. And so when we have the produce available to us that we have nowadays, it is not aligned with an ancestral diet, in my opinion.
Right.
So when you tell the average person, eat a high fat diet and then eat fruit on top of it, it is a recipe for disaster in the sense that we have fat for fuel, or we have carbohydrates for fuel.
Right.
And when we were evolving as a species and doing the ancestral diet that we obviously evolved doing, when they had berries and produce or grains, it was available for a really short, and I'm talking millions of years ago. I'm not talking about, 1,000 years ago. I'm talking about millions of years ago. And so they would gorge on those berries until the berry trees were no more. And that was their treat. They ate it when it was available, and then they didn't have it until the next year.
I can see that.
And so I think when you tell someone to eat a high fat diet and then recommend a high fructose diet as well, your body is has two energy sources coming in at the same time. And that's just not what we were meant to do. I am okay. We just talked with someone, his name is Fernando Lopez, and he says to his clients, earn your carbs, work really, really, really hard.
And then earn your carbs. You do earn your carbs.
I do. And the only food that I really consume that is carb heavy is I do have a sweet potato every couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Not weekly, not daily. And that is just because that is my favorite vegetable in the entire world. And it is one thing that I found that I can tolerate after a very, very hard day at the gym. And it does help muscle recovery a little bit. And so I will do that if I really pushed myself. But I do think for the average people, consuming fruit on an animal-based diet is probably okay. But for people who are metabolically unwell, which most of us are actually, it is terrible, terrible advice. I get very, very cautious when someone comes to me and says, hey, I have type 2 diabetes, but I want to eat fruit. And I said, you really need to go to a professional who is more in the carnivore, low carb space, because I think that that is dangerous territory to be going into.
And if we had another hour, we would talk about how dietitians are still telling these type 2 diabetics to have an apple as their snack in between or to grab a handful of fruit, but don't have time. Devan, you're killing it there. Go ahead and show me your muscles. Go ahead and come on, let me see your guns.
I don't know if I can show you my guns.
Dang it. I can tell you're fit.
I have some really good shoulder muscles that I'm working on right now.
Awesome. Well,
I'd love to send you some of my before and after progress pictures, though.
Oh,
because
do.
I'm
and
really
Darren's listening as we wrap this up. Darren will post those for the graphic for this, but that's very inspiring. Awesome. You're very inspiring, Devan. What was your total weight loss again? About 80 pounds?
So if you have collectively done it, I've lost about 90 pounds.
90 pounds.
In the past 6 years. Yeah.
That's unbelievable. Yes, that will be part of the information we put out. Thank you so much. We'll put your links to all of your social media so people can track you down.
Okay.
And I hope you make me famous because this is a great conversation.
I hope you make me famous. well, what do they say? You got to dip in everyone's followings. That's what we're doing. It's just exchanging everyone's following and hoping to get the information out there. That's really what it is. So
for sure. Well, thank you. Great job today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We'll be in touch.
Thanks for listening to the Lisa Fisher Said podcast. Be sure to hit subscribe and download all the episodes and leave a review, won't you? The Lisa Fisher Said podcast is produced by ClantonCreative.com.